Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to invite you all to this special event we've got this afternoon for Australia for UNHCR's Leading Women Fund. I'm Trudy Mitchell. I'm the Deputy National Director at Australia for UNHCR. And this afternoon, you can see we've got three lovely guests on the screen, whom I'll introduce just a little bit later. First, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we stand on today, or that I stand on at the moment, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I would also like to extend that respect to the traditional owners of the land that you're on today as you watch this. I'd like to welcome our patron, Allis Spiegelman, our donors, Leading Women Fund members, and anyone who is wanting to find out more about UNHCR's work in Jordan and its work generally. We've got the Q&A function is open, so if you want to put questions in, we'll try to get to as many as we can this afternoon. So if you'd like to do that, please go ahead as we go. So I'll just start off with giving you just a bit of context around what we're going to hear about this afternoon. As many of you would know, Australia for UNHCR's donors have generously helped the 13 million refugees and displaced people from the Syrian conflict. Sadly, that conflict's been going for over 10 years now. 5 million of that 13 million are refugees, so people who have been forced to flee their country, and they're in neighbouring countries such as Jordan. 1/3 of those refugee households are headed by women, and they have challenges that we will hear about this afternoon as well. These barriers are what the Leading Women Fund was set up to address by engaging women in Australia and mobilising resources that enable refugee women to live more secure and safe lives. Australia for UNHCR's Leading Women Fund was launched in 2020. It is a network of Australian women united in their passion to support forcibly displaced women around the world. And the first project the Leading Women Fund has been focused on is for the Syrian refugee women in Jordan, particularly those who are heads of household, as they are incredibly vulnerable. And one of the most important ways of helping people is through cash assistance, which is an efficient, dignified and empowering way of delivering humanitarian aid. And that's what the Leading Women Fund is about. Each family receives a monthly sum of $230 Australian. This will help them pay rent, buy food, or even school books for children. So far, the Leading Women Fund has assisted over 150 families and 730 individuals with a monthly cash assistance. I'd also like to recognise the great work of our UNHCR colleagues on the ground in Jordan, who are working with around 700,000 refugees and really trying to help them, and we're going to hear more about that. And also I'd like to acknowledge the government of the Kingdom of Jordan, who have been truly innovative and are really trying to find durable solutions to help refugees. So now I'll introduce our wonderful panel this afternoon, who are all with us from Jordan, and I think it's about 9 a.m. there, so not too early, which is great. So today we're joined by Leading Women Fund Ambassador, Janine Allis. Many of you would know Janine, she'd be very familiar. She's an entrepreneur, the founder of Boost Juice. She's an author, has produced podcasts, and she appears on high-profile television programs as well. Also joining us today is our colleague from Australia for UNHCR, Director of Strategy, Deborah O'Neill. Deborah has worked with our organisation for more than 20 years now, creating innovative campaigns. She is passionate about supporting refugee women and girls, and was instrumental in setting up the Leading Women's Fund. And finally, Rojanne Gordon, she is the Associate Private Sector Partnership Officer with UNHCR on the ground in Jordan. Rojanne worked for UNHCR for over 8 years, and that includes in Greece and Iraq. So Rojanne, I'll come to you first because you've got a very poignant story to tell. As you were a refugee as a baby, your mother fled with you and your 3-year-old sister, I think, to escape the war in Iraq. If you could share some of your personal story, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Trudy. And it's really exciting to be joining beside the colleagues from Deborah and colleagues from Australia for UNHCR and the Leading Women's Fund Ambassador, Janine. It has been an extraordinary couple of days and we have so much to tell. And I want to also greet our audience. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, back to the question, Trudy. Yes, I have been a refugee and at the age of 1 year old, with my sister at the time who was 3 years old. This was in 1991. There was conflict happening in Iraq. My father was not around at that time. There was no telephones, nothing. So my mom had to make the decision and flee. And this fleeing and safety meant hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. And it meant somewhere not inside Iraq, somewhere outside the borders of Iraq. So she had to walk for almost 20 days on foot. It was really cold. And until this day, she remembers all the small details, people that she's met on the way, and how was the situation when she arrived in a settlement that was not even a camp. There were not even tents for so long. They were just using their clothing over a tree to protect themselves from the snow and from rain. She still feels the cold up to this day. And yeah, when she explains the situation, I always wonder if I could have done it. And whenever I meet a refugee mother, I remember my mom in them. And I wonder, was my mom feeling the same? Was it the same situation? And after being a refugee for a couple of months in a settlement in Turkey, the situation was very hard. It was too difficult to get food for us or for herself even. And after a couple of months, my father was looking for us, and luckily he was able to locate us. And at that time, there were news that our area became safe again a little bit, despite the looting, despite the fact that knowing that they might just go back to nothing, no schools, nothing. But still, it was better than being in a settlement that didn't even have a shelter for them, something very basic, and they couldn't even guarantee food at that time. So they made the decision to return back and start their life all over again. And that story itself is another challenge, it's another journey. But I think up to this day, she thinks that was the right decision that she's made, despite all the challenges that happened, and despite the fact that other people who were with her ended up in completely different situations and countries. Yeah. Thank you.
Your mother is a very inspiring woman, and like many refugee women will do anything to get their family to safety, which is just amazing. And it makes me think, Rojanne, how has this influenced you in now your work with UNHCR?
I think at the beginning, I've always thought that this was the norm, you know. all my peers at school had gone through some sort of displacement, if it was internal displacement or being a refugee somewhere, even for years, not even for months. And even myself, I became internally displaced in 2003 during another conflict when I was a student, and I remember very well. So when I first started working for UNHCR, for me, it was always like that heroic role that humanitarian workers take, and where you are in really complicated situation and you put the priority of other people in need before yours, before your family as well. As I got into working with the protection team in Iraq, and during the Syrian conflict on the border, and also the Yazidi conflict in 2014, I completely forgot myself, and I was there to make sure today I do my best to ensure I give some comfort and some sort of feeling of safety and trust to people that are arriving on the border, and just, some of them are feeling captivity. So for me, that became my priority and I thought that this will be one day and then become 1 week, and then it took months, and then it took years. And from 2012 until 2016, when I was with Iraq operation, it was an ongoing flow of refugees and IDPs arriving on the Syrian and Turkish border, and even from other cities in Iraq. So it was so much exchange of energy. I started to love it more and more, and day by day. And I never thought it will be like that when I first joined. When I joined, I thought it will be a lot of, finding solutions that are long term, that, that will someone that I will meet one day, and then we will be able to help them, and then to next person. But then we made friends, with the people who are arriving. For years, I see them having their newborn from the hospital, taking it home, visiting that newborn, making sure that newborn received vaccination, making sure they are registered in nurseries and daycare. It was just so overwhelming from so many different lenses and perspectives. So until this day, even though I'm in Jordan, I receive phone calls from people that we've met this connection with, and they have ended up again in different places. Some have gone back, and it's the same with the refugees that we are working with here in Jordan. I have been here for 3 years, and the experience has been extraordinary. I see people that I've met 3 years ago, now they are in completely different situation. So yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. And as much as I explain, I think I can only convey around 10% of what I feel or what I do on a daily basis.
Thanks, Rajan. I think I come to you, Janine, now. So this is your first visit with Australia for UNHCR to Jordan, and your first time in refugee camps and settlements. And when you hear Rajan's story, how do you respond to stories like that?
Look, we're fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with Rajan, and she elaborated on that story. Like, I put myself into her mother's shoes, and sometimes I've had a 1-year-old and 3-year-old too, and it's really hard to even go around the shopping centre. So when she tells me a story that her mother had to walk hundreds of kilometres with a 1-year-old and 3-year-old in the snow, walking past babies that have been just left because of the desperations of the parents, not knowing if you're going to survive, even to make that choice to go, I probably will die. I mean, her mother thought that she wasn't going to make it, but that was a better choice than staying. So, I admire the decision and the fortitude and the strength of her mother to get there. She even told me that there was no milk. So, and the mother had completely dried up. So Rajan, who was basically given water and flour as substitute, as her food. So, I think that when you put yourself in that shoes, where you have this little 3-year-old literally walking hundreds of kilometres, you just can't even comprehend the challenges that these people face on this journey. So, you know, that was one of the aha moments I had on this journey.
Thanks, Janine. I think, yeah, it's just incredible to hear these stories, and for you to hear them, you know, firsthand from people, I think it's even more incredible. So Deborah, I'll come to you now. Can you just sort of give us a bit of an overview of the reason why you've travelled to Jordan as a group, please?
Thanks, Trudy. Well, we Australian donors have been really generous in their support for the Syrian emergency, which has been going for, you know, more than 12 years now. But I guess that would be called a protracted situation, and we really wanted to understand what was the situation on the ground now. Jordan government, the Kingdom of Jordan, generously accepted, you know, many refugees, 700,000 registered Syrian refugees. I guess we really wanted to see what the donor money had achieved, which I think is around 3 million for Syrian refugees in Jordan. And also the Leading Women Fund program has been going for 2 years, and we wanted to understand the impact on the ground. How does cash assistance work? I mean, Jordan's a really innovative country. Cash assistance was piloted here. So it's, and since then it's been rolled out. It's in neighbouring countries for the Ukraine emergency. It's an amazing innovation. So we wanted to really understand how that worked as well.
Okay. So I think a couple of days ago, you all visited the home of a 47-year-old woman called Malak. We have a video here just to give our audience a bit of an idea of what it was like to visit Malak in her home. And then I'll come to Janine after that. Thank you. So, Janine, they're nice sort of images there. Can you just give us a bit of a background around Malak's story, please?
Yeah, and I think this is probably where the misconception comes from when you know, people look at refugees, they think that they're others. Now, Malak is a highly educated, she's got a master's degree in education, and she's also a psychologist that actually helps children with trauma. So she is a highly educated and dynamic professional woman in Syria. Now, she told a story of why she left was that she was looking after, she was part of a school that had 700 children, but on the way to work every day, there were snipers all in the buildings. And so she didn't know, just for fun, whether she'd be taken out or whether they thought she was someone else. So every single day you go to work, wonder if you're going to be shot in the back of the head. So it's actually quite confronting. Now, she came to Jordan, and the Kingdom of Jordan again welcomed her. And unfortunately, she met a man and married an abusive husband. So she's had it tough. But despite that, she smiled. She had a good sense of humour, and she was incredibly warm. But, her challenge is vast. I mean, she has an 88-year-old very ill mother that she looks after. Very difficult for her work because of some of the challenges. And, her only chance of even having any sort of resemblance of any sort of life is the cash assistance that we've given her, or the fund has given her. So, I think that one of the things that I sat down and pondered was that it could be us, who's just been, we have this life and we have a middle-class life and it's all great. And then one day you are a visitor. And I think that's one of the things that came really clear is you're always a guest. So you haven't got the same freedom and rights as the Jordanians, even though that you are safe, you have food, you have shelter, but you're always a guest, and we all know what it's like to be a guest, you know, and you want to have that freedom to choose.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think they've come from such you know, great lives in Syria, and then conflict has just totally thrown their whole worlds up in the air. And yeah, and it does make you think that Malak and her, just the need for cash assistance just to survive is, you know, it's pretty stark, isn't it? So
yeah, no, it is.
So Deborah, I believe Malak also participated in the Connecting Worlds app program, which is a new is an innovation that UNHCR's done. Can you briefly explain the app and also Malak's experience of it?
Well, Connecting Worlds, actually the seed, it really came from what the Jordan operation were doing, as you know, 82% of refugees are in urban areas, and the Jordan UNHCR team were visiting these women in their homes. You know, Jordan is the second worst country in the world, basically, in terms of, you know, for women, you know, ability to work and inclusion and access to financial services, etc. So the team were doing a lot of home-based visits, and that really was the start of this amazing innovation called the Connecting Worlds app that connects, which we launched 2 years ago with the Leading Women Fund, and it connects Australian women with Syrian refugee women, and provides them with cash assistance. So that $230 every month, which provides the essentials, rent and food, and also provides them with the dignity. Given they're in an urban setting, they can go to the local supermarket, they can choose the food that suits them and their families. And I think the other big piece, well, you know, having that dignity, having that sense of agency after, you know, all the trauma that they've gone through is just absolutely priceless. And Malak told us when with her match, it really came at such an important time for her. And, you know, it was just a really transformative experience for her, having that connection. So that was very moving. There was, yeah, a lot of emotion actually when she was talking about the experience with the app. And so her family situation, she lives with her 88-year-old mother, and they do actually receive an additional grant for particularly severe medical conditions. But the app, the app and the cash assistance provides that monthly support. So you just cannot discount, I guess, that connection and that emotional support that, you know, Australian donors can provide. And there's actually a new version of the app that the team, you know, we talked about Jordan being such an innovative country, you know, cash assistance starting here, the seeds of the app starting here, many amazing innovations. But they're about to launch a new part of the app called the Mentor app, where Australian donors can effectively mentor these you know, women with incredible potential and try and support them as they kind of grow their home-based businesses. So yeah, it just really came to life for us, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. I think, sorry, Janine, you're on mute. Did you want to say?
Yeah, just further to that, I think just what Deborah said, as soon as we mentioned the app, she did break into tears, and she said that the connection with that Australian woman lifted her up. She said that just by being able to have a connection from another woman in another place and have some things in common, she said that actually it took her out of a very dark place. And so I think there is a money component, and they need that. But one of the things that came clear on this trip was that emotional connection that this is creating is incredibly invaluable.
I think it sounds like a very moving, you know, meeting Malak and just hearing her story and seeing just how that connection can really lift people when they're in quite dark circumstances. my understanding as well with the cash assistance program is that there are around 11,000 people in Jordan at the moment who are still haven't got access to it. So, you know, there's challenges there. So Rajan, so the majority of refugees in Jordan are from Syria, but I know that others are from Iraq, Yemeni, and Somalia. Can you explain how it works and why refugees would live in isolated camps versus in the city, and just to give us some numbers and how that all works? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Trudy. Yes, as Deborah already mentioned, over 80% of the refugees in Jordan are like Malak. They prefer to be living in urban settings, despite the fact that it comes with a lot of challenges where there is rent to pay, and also there are many bills to pay, while when generally there are more opportunities for someone to be able to meet their needs when they are living in a camp. Just like you don't have to pay the rent for the shelter, and also you get a food voucher and support from the humanitarian organizations, and also you have free electricity that's almost around on average 16 hours per day, and also so many other services, just like schools. The distance to the schools, you don't have to pay for transportation or the nursery and the daycare and all these services that are available. But I think a lot of refugees coming from Syria and looking at how they lived before, it's so difficult to live in some isolated places, because, for example, we have two main camps, Za'atari and Azraq. Although Za'atari has some access to the Mafraq city, but Azraq is a home to a big number of refugees, and yet it's really isolated. It's also very difficult, to access the job opportunities there. And so for many refugees, especially at the beginning, was very difficult to adapt to the life in camp. There was no electricity at that time, and also there were very basic services in place. Even the shelter was not in a good condition, so they had to stay and wait for the services to arrive and support from the donors to arrive. So Malak, she explained also to us when she first arrived, she was in Azraq camp, and she even stayed there for a couple of months, but it was so difficult with her condition and her mother as well to stay there. It's very hot in summer, and at that time there was no cooling, no light even for the night, and no electricity for cooling during the hot summer days. Fortunately, nowadays it's much better. There are these services available. However, it's still it's isolating. It's difficult to integrate in the community. It's difficult to find job opportunities, despite the fact that children can still have access to schools and all other services. Yeah.
It would be a very hard decision, wouldn't it, to do I go to a camp where I can have all of these services but I'm isolated, or do I want to integrate with the community? And I think the integration with the community is really helped through cash assistance as well, because you're spending money in the community and it builds up those relationships, which is fantastic. And I'm just going to say to our audience, if you do have any questions as we go, please post them on the Q&A function. We'd love to hear from you, and if I can ask our experts here any of those questions, I would love to. So don't be shy. So as you were saying, Rajan, yesterday you visited the Azraq camp. It's in central eastern Jordan. We also got a video of your visit yesterday, so we'll have a look at that. Thank you. Okay, so Janine, I'll come to you. But again, great footage, and it gives us a bit of a sense of the size of the Azraq camp there. But can you give us your impressions of Azraq, Janine?
Look, I think the thing that became really clear to me is you've got to remember it's the middle of the desert, right? They are completely isolated. Even though there's 40,000 people in this camp of tents as far as the eyes can see, it's in the middle of nowhere. The other thing, which I think is like torturous, it's 50 kilometres from the border of Syria. So they're so close to being home, which they all want to be. They don't want to be there. They want to be home, but they're really in this situation. You saw on the video there was some housing. Now those houses are 4 by 8. There's a maximum of 8 people that live in there. It is tiny and they're tin. So, and there is this constant wind. As I said, it's a desert. So you get cold winters and hot summers. So the scene of it is quite confronting. But despite that, the Kingdom of Jordan, the international funds and the donors that have contributed have created a community that is actually quite extraordinary. I mean, you saw a vision of us in their art centre. Some of the talent is blows your mind. Some of the children are getting 99.3% in their marks. But there's nowhere to go. The problem with what we've got is it's limbo, because as soon as Syria gets into a place where it's safe, they'll go home. But it's 10 years. It may never, ever be there. So they're in this state of limbo where the Jordanian government has to balance, their own people compared to the refugees, compared to, how does that work with employment? How does that work with funding? How does that work with water? So they have to consider all of these things. So the one thing that came really clear to me is that there's 60% of the population is children. And one of the things with me as a mother is that all I want is to give my children the best possible opportunity. And we met this gorgeous woman with 5 kids who she was sort of going, I've got no hope, but all I want is a future for my children. And, one kid wanted to be a professional soccer player. She had a beautiful daughter who was the same age as my daughter, who was in exactly the same things. All it is about are girlfriends. But you sort of go, where do they go? Yes, there's some fantastic programs with sponsorship, with educational sponsorships. But last year there was two people out of 42 places out of 40,000 was offered. And as Deborah mentioned earlier, with the evolution of the app, there might be an opportunity to sort of increase that to a bigger number, because there are these incredible young people who at the moment really struggling to find out where they'll be. And as a mother and as a parent, all I want for my kids is a future. And even though they have food, shelter and safety, which is phenomenally a great basis, it's that other element, which is, what are these incredible, kind, divine people? Where do they go from here with no end in sight with Syria? So I think that was probably my biggest takeout from Azraq. I mean, but it's a community, and it's so different from the urban, so urban, they have, different challenges, but the isolation, when you say, okay, get a bus and go to the city for a job, it's cost prohibitive. They can't even get on a bus to get there. There is small businesses that are sending buses, but it's so small. So, I think that because everyone thought that this wasn't going to go on for over 10 years, and now we're here going 10 years, nothing's changed. They're now sort of thinking long-term plan. How does that unfold? And they need help and support more than they ever have.
And I think that long-term solution piece is, as you say, what is the answer there? And it's and I think it's also amazing to see how resilient refugees are and how they find solutions and are innovative too in these settings. It would have been an amazing experience to see that. Now, Deborah, I've got a couple of questions, so thanks for the questions. And we've got questions around how the mentorship program works on the app, and just a little bit more about the app and how that works. Deborah, if you could just explain that to Margot's asking that question.
I might pass that to Roseanne. Roseanne's been part of the global team that's that piloted the app.
Okay, Roseanne.
Yes, thank you. So as we previously mentioned, we are now developing another version of Connecting Worlds app. The first version that was supporting women who are benefiting from cash-based interventions or cash assistance on monthly basis. The new version that will launch in around end of July is called Connecting Worlds Mentor. It's mainly supporting funding new seats for students in tertiary education, which means entering university. As previously mentioned, there are only very small percentage of refugees every year entering university. For example, on Duffy scholarship, that German scholarship through UNHCR's program in Jordan has only funded 40 seats last year, which is among thousands of students finishing high school every year. It's very also disappointing for students in primary school and secondary school thinking, I will never get that opportunity to enter university. So why bother and study? I will never get an employment, you know, after that, why should I study? So we have been through the Connecting Worlds app. We've received a lot of interest from donors who wanted to support making a seat or for a refugee student in Jordan, and now we are also even considering Afghan students in Pakistan to be enrolled in a university after high school. So the Mentor app would guarantee either one seat for one student at 3,200 USD for 1 full year to study, or 12,800 USD for a full scholarship for 4 complete years. And this Mentor app will also connect the donor for 3 months with a currently enrolled student on the Duffy scholarship in Jordan or in Pakistan to be mentoring each other, and the donor will be able to share their experiences, academic experiences, all professional or even social well-being. The period of communication is 3 months, and this will give enough time for the mentee and the mentor to achieve their goal on the app. And also this is also lessons learned from the cash version of the app, where there was a lot of meaningful exchanges happening on the app itself, and there is a lot of benefit coming out of this conversation, regardless of the funding that's happening on the site, and that's really life-changing for these students and their families as well, and the whole generation.
I think just to go further on to that, I think the app has 2 very clear components. Currently, the one is Women Connecting Women, which was the one that Malak was on, and that is the sort of what the Leading Women's Fund's doing. And what Roshan was talking about was the second component, which was the students. So it's really, which is awesome, because there's 2 avenues. Because as a mother, I want my children to have the best opportunity. So that's why it's such a great synergy for this, for the app, to have, you can connect women with women, or you can connect, say, a doctor with a child but wanting to be a doctor. So there's, it is such a great evolution of what the app is, and it's really clear how you can get involved. It's download the app, and we can send you all the information. Well, actually, I'm sure there's a way that we'll actually make it really clear how you can actually get involved and connect to the app and join, because it is actually, it's like a pen pal on steroids.
I love that, a pen pal on steroids. I think there is nothing like having that connection with somebody in a really different space, is it? And being able to share and do good together. I've got, and we will be sending some more information in an email tomorrow to everybody, so that if you want further information around the Leading Women Fund and the app and how you can join, we'll be sending you that information. Rayshan, I've got another question from Sky from Bega in New South Wales. And she was saying that she's noticed in the video that you can see mostly men and boys outside in the camps. And she's wondering how it is for women and girls there, and girls, do they get education, and, you know, and privacy, and how that all works. Could you just give us a bit of an overview of that, please?
Yes, actually, this was something that Deborah also mentioned when we were in the camp, that it was a little bit difficult on the streets or in the camp inside to locate women. And this is due to various reasons as well. The fact that majority of the shops are owned by men, and also there are not much happening in the camp. So usually the men are the one who are going out and bringing grocery for the household. The women usually saying, but there are definitely community centers and activities happening for women, and also schools are open and schools and nurseries and daycare from first until they finish their high school degree. They are available in camp, and they can go to the camp, and they really go. But as I said, there is some sort of discouragement from the fact that there is very little opportunities available for the students to enter universities due to the fees of the university, and the very limited scholarships and spots available for students. And this is competition all over Jordan. When I say 40 spots last year, this is for Za'atari camp, Azraq camp, and all urban. And imagine among the huge population of the refugee here in Jordan, only 40 students could actually make it to the university. So this really affects on the motivation of other, girls and even boys to thinking what I will become. If I finish the high school, there is a 95% chance that I'm never entering university, and eventually I will have to either stay jobless or wait to work in a construction sector, for example, as a daily worker.
Yeah. Just further to that, what they do is they have girls that study in the morning and boys that study in the afternoon. So the girls and boys don't necessarily study together, but what I was really pleased to see is that the girls are getting an education. But it is still once you leave school, it is not easy for women to get work, let alone, as Rayshan said, the fact that it's like 99.9% chance of not getting in. So, and I was just sitting there thinking at the time when they were telling me this, that God, imagine the sliding door moment we can give someone who's, got a 99.3%, incredibly smart. And, one day they'll tell a story about how they actually, became a world cure of cancer because they got this opportunity from us.
Yeah, it is all about opportunities, isn't it? And that's what you can, help with, funding scholarships and the Leading Women Fund, and giving people that opportunity to get and they just want a leg up, don't they? Just to get that opportunity, and they make the most of it. Deborah.
I was just going to add to that 2 days ago we visited the one of the community centres here in Amman, and really saw ourselves that kind of leg up kind of concept that the Leading Women Fund had supported the micro business training there. We met a number of there was 8 women in the room that we met that had all gone through the training, and they were all showing us, well, I actually managed to be gifted one of their products, from ceramics. They were learning cooking, many things, plumbing even. And they'd gone through that course, and the next stage was seed funding, and then another innovation, I guess, from in Jordan or in Amman is these home-based businesses. So really trying to create, opportunities. And what I've heard a lot of people say about the program here is really about not looking for vulnerability, but how can we create opportunities, and everybody wants to earn an income. So, you know, really trying to support that, and, you know, in many innovative ways, which is what we've seen here as well.
And it's that self-reliance and building that dignity, and for people to have choices. Yeah.
And I think that just on that point, going to the community centre was extraordinary. And the money that we've raised to date, or some of the money that we've raised to date, what I saw in these women's faces was, oh my God, I can not only do this, I can have a skill, I can actually be self-sufficient. You know, and it was, and there was a woman going, I'm a really good cook, I'm now catering, and you know, I hire staff. And there was other people going, actually, you know what, I'm really good, I've got an Instagram page. But it was that ability to go, okay, I can't do this, and then opening that glass ceiling for them to go, you can. And you know, how did that, like, there was another gorgeous woman, who was into skincare and beauty, and you know, that ability to be in a group of women who are all like-minded, who want to have their own little business, to actually to really encourage them, which is no different to us. You know, us in the Western world and in Australia, we need our mates around to really go, come on, we can do this. And I think that was one of the things that I thought I was really proud of you know, the money that's been raised has actually opened these women's eyes to what they can do.
And it's a relatively small investment, isn't it? And it's a big return if we're thinking in business terms, Janine.
Yeah, and you know, it was really interesting because this is a group of women were from all different backgrounds. It wasn't just Syrian. There was a young girl from Iraq. There was an older woman from, you know, Iran. Like, there was all different nationalities, but they had this common connection of motivated to want to do their own business, but also the fact that they're refugees and are in the similar challenges.
I think before we just leave Azraq camp completely, Rajan, I think the audience would be interested to know about the innovation there around the use of solar electricity and using solar energy. And I think in this day and age, it's such a relevant thing for us to talk about. So can you just give us a bit of an overview of that?
Yeah, that's right. We visited the solar plant yesterday, and it was amazing. I mean, seeing the clean energy is amazing. So Azraq was the first refugee camp in the world to be powered by renewable energy, and it's something really big, you know. There are around 18,000 solar panels that provide around 65% of Azraq camp's power, which means lighting and also cooling, heating, and you know, TV, refrigerator, and everything else. And people in the camp have electricity on average for 16 hours per day, which is not really, you know, the best, but still it's something, which means they can cook using the electrical cookers. They can cool their homes during hot summers, and as I said, it's during summer, it's desert, it's very hot. And also there are so many other things about Azraq camp that are so impressive. This regardless of the solar panel that's almost nowhere in the world. If you visit other camps in the world, there are around 9,000 shelters, so they are not caravans or not tents. There are 15 schools inside the camp, and also 2 large supermarkets and 250 shops that almost 50% of them are owned by refugees, and the other 50 are owned by locals, Jordanians. This kind of rationale of owning the 50% by locals and 50% by refugees also promotes that social cohesion and also integration in the community.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? It is a whole community and everything's happening there. Yeah, and great to see that it's solar powered as well. So we're sort of hearing that the basic needs of refugees are being met at Azraq camp. Deborah, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that a bit more.
Well, just really to add, it really is like a small town, and absolutely basic needs are being met, but you can't kind of dismiss the, you know, the trauma. There's, you know, from what UNHCR or our observations as well, and speaking with some of the refugees, the younger generation want to go back. You know, many of them have been born in the camp. HASRAC started in May 2013, kind of when Zatri was getting too big. But the parents don't want to go back. As Janine was saying, it's only 50 kilometres from the border. The parents remember the barrel bombs, you know, there's still forced conscription. So there's some kind of generational, you know, perceptions there, but just also coming through, and, you know, for the leading women community on the call, the strength of the women was just kind of every, you know, when we spoke with Pfizer yesterday, you know, she all she wanted was the best for her children. It was just so single-minded, and that's really come through, you know, in an education and a future, and that's really come through in all of our conversations. So that, you know, that's not, you don't really read that type of thing in a situation report, or so that was, you know, so really beautiful. And yeah, just the size of ASRAC, as Janine said, middle of the desert. We learned that it's actually increasing in size. There's 134 children born a month. So it's close to 40,000 now. And so many of these children have lived their whole lives here. But you still, you know, pockets of humour, you know, and, you know, beautiful examples. We went to this amazing, Syrians are very well known for their sweets. So we went to this fantastic, you saw the footage there, like, you know, got this enormous platter of you know, Syrian sweets. And it was just so lovely to be, you know, meeting the local business people as well that are really, you know, making the most of their situation.
And the hospitality, I think, would be very touching as well. So, Rajan, my question here is about can you just explain the challenges around refugees getting rights to work and being able to work, and just explain that a little bit more to us, please?
Sure, yeah. So there is a work permit scheme that allows Syrian refugees in Jordan to have opportunity to work in certain occupations. This scheme has started only in 2016, while a majority of refugees sought asylum between 2012 and 14. And it covers agriculture and construction and manufacturing, mainly clothing and plastics. These are mainly jobs that Jordanians didn't want it. So these schemes are open for refugees here. So, you know, it doesn't create any kind of stress, and also really fill up the market as well. So Jordan wants to grow its agriculture output. Currently in Jordan, everything is imported, and also this fits very well with the refugee community, as there is a lot of skills, and almost 3/4 of refugees have the farming skills, and they know about it from, you know, back home, and so they are really happy to work in agriculture, but they want to do more than just planting and harvesting. So there is a lot of interest in smart agriculture, because Jordan has, I think it's the on the world, it's the second that's water scarce. So hydroponic initiatives are quite like interesting, and also there's a lot of interest from refugees also to be involved in, because they are so innovative, and they are also helpful for the communities, either in camps and also in urban. And we yesterday in ASRAC we did visit a hydroponic project in ASRAC, and yeah, we will be, yeah, we can share more about it.
Well, that'd be fantastic. Now, I'm mindful of time. We have 4 minutes to go. We could talk all day, I think, because it just sounds like the most amazing experience. But I'll come to you, Janine, because you're going to be heading off after this webinar to go to refugee women who have their own home-based businesses. And I'm just wondering, what do you think about these home-based businesses that women refugees are setting up?
Look, I think whether you're in here or anywhere in the world, you know, I think there's some incredibly talented women out there that can actually do anything. And from the challenges of being able to work in fields that you want to work in, this is an ability for women and in fact men too, to be able to start a business from home. Yeah, because it's all very well going, okay, you can be agriculture and you can be in factories, but what if you want to be a artist? Or what if you want to be create a juice bar? So this enables people to have the freedom to be able to create whatever business they want and work from home. And look, we're in a world now that, you've got Etsy, you've got, all of these e-commerce platforms that people can now create products and actually get into the world. Now, they're a long way away from that, but what they've started, like any idea starts with an idea of wouldn't it be good if? So that's what a lot of these women have done is, wouldn't it be good if I can actually create a small business at home and, maybe just get a little bit more income, or maybe start a really good business. So every business on the planet has started mostly from a home-based business. And so it's really exciting that these women have now at least opened their eyes to the possibility. I think before it was, there's nothing I can do. I have no hope. Now they're going, actually, there's a lot I can do. And just seeing the dignity that gives these women, and the feeling that even some of the women spoke to us, that the comments was, I can now support my family. So it is, if we can give them dignity and hope, our job's done.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And just to see how they take it and run with it. We look forward to hearing how your next visit goes with that lady and see how her home business is going. So we're almost out of time, and I'm just seeing that we've got some more questions about the app. So we'll come back to you with that information tomorrow in an email, just so that, and we can go into more detail if required on an email. We're seeing lots of thank yous for sharing your stories and for sharing your experience. So that's very much appreciated. I guess we've got a minute, so I'd just like a final thought, and I'll go to you, Janine, on that, on your experience.
Probably my final thought is that often we think of people in other countries, particularly countries that are sort of not Western, as others. I think the clear thing is that these women and men and children are us. They are women and men that just want the best for their family. They just want the best for themselves. They just want to have freedom. And I think the work that the Kingdom of Jordan, UNHCR has done is absolutely incredible. And I think the final thing I'd say is, UNHCR is, one of the things I was really not shocked, but I became really clear is how big an organisation and the great work that UNHCR is doing. I mean, I think that we have an awareness of about 20% in the marketplace, yet we are 80% of the work that's done. We are the connector of all the other charities in some respects, that we sort of keep them all together, so we're the first in, last out. So I think that, really proud and excited to be part of the UNHCR family.
Thanks, Janine. I think that's a beautiful sum up. And if you want to make a donation, you can have a look at that QR code, and you can put your phone over it and you can make a donation. As I said, we'll be sending you more information tomorrow about the Leading Women Fund. And finally, I would really like to make a really big thank you to our panel this afternoon, to our ambassador, Janine Allis, to Rojan, who's working hard as a humanitarian every day in Jordan, and to Deborah O'Neill, who has had that great idea to get the Leading Women Fund up and going to support women. So thanks everybody for your time. We really appreciate it, and have a good afternoon.